Hello, endeavour you join me for extract 2 of chapter 25, Execution Day. A gate in the jailhouse wall opened. Ding dong, ding dong. Every chime struck another second off the life of a man. He climbed the steps slowly, head down, his hands were tied behind him. Ding dong, ding dong. He stopped at the top of the platform. His head stayed down, but his eyes glanced up and looked into mine. Ding dong, ding dong. One eye closed slowly in a wink that no one saw but me in January. Dong. The first stroke of his last hour chimed. Dong. He raised his head a little and his great eyes glowed in the grey shadows of grease paint. Dong. He took out a piece of paper and began to read. Dong. It's a far, far better thing that I do than I have ever done, he said. Dong. Sergeant slipped a noose around his neck. Dong. It is a far, far better rest that I go to than I have ever known, the condemned man concluded. The gentleman writer murmured, well said. Dong. Sergeant placed a white hood over the victim's head. Dong. The last bell's boom rang out like doom. Sergeant stepped back and pulled a lever and the floor of the scaffold opened and the fat figure fell through. There was a gasp from the mob and somehow I'd expected a cheer, but those noble words had made them silent and thoughtful. If you've ever heard those words before, it could be that you have. The gentleman writer used them at the end of a famous book he wrote in 1859, a year after this hanging, but the words were first spoken in real life on that scaffold in Eden City. I don't mind the gentleman writer using the words, of course. After all, he had drafted them for the hanged man's speech. Hadn't he? They began to shuffle off a little ashamed, and January gave a low moan, and the English gentleman gave a low groan. Only the three great men of Eden City looked happy. What was all that about far, far better things? Mr. Mucklethrift asked. I don't know, Mayor Weed shrugged, but I thought it sounded rather fine. Nothing fine about being hanged for theft, Judge Coote grumbled. A far, far better rest, Mr. Mucklethrift said, scratching his head. We've all had a better rest tonight, knowing that fat fiend is out of our way, the judge sniffed. Mucklethrift slapped them both on the back. And we shall all enjoy a better breakfast this morning, my friends. Come back to Mucklethrift Manor and join me, he said, and guided them through the thinning crowd. They left without a glance back at the scaffold, but we three stayed. We had work to do. We picked up the coffin, January and I at the bottom end, and the gentleman writer at the head. Sergeant's two big police constables were laying the lifeless shape down on the cold cobbles behind the scaffold. The scaffold made one of those Eden City shadows that was black, like a bottle-stained ink with the air around it. We dragged the coffin out of the shadows, yet some of the shadows seemed to cling. I pressed the switch to open the lid and nothing happened, so I gave it a click and the lid flew open. I really would have to fix that switch some day. No skeleton called Skinny popped up. We'd left Skinny in the corner of the stage at the Storm Inn. Can you help us put Uncle in the coffin? I asked Constable Drab. They looked at one another. We're supposed to bury him in the jailhouse walls, Constable Joss said. Have you dug the grave? I asked. We haven't had time. It's taken us all night to set up the scaffold, Constable Drab complained. So, the English gentleman said, you won't want to start digging the cold clay now, will you? Why, no. So let us take the body away and give him a proper burial. I suppose. That way the boy will be able to visit the grave with flowers every day, the English gentleman said. He's due to get on the 10 o'clock train, Constable Joss reminded us. I'll put flowers there for you, poor little Jim, January offered. Don't cry. I wasn't crying. Well, you should be. You've just watched your dear old uncle hang, she snapped. Oh, yes, boo-hoo, poor old uncle, what? Yes, all right, Constable Joss said. Here, look, we'll tuck your uncle away nice and comfy in your coffin. Just stop wailing. I stopped. Now make sure he gets a proper burial, Constable Joss said to the English gentleman. I will. Constable Drab patted me on the head and walked off. Time for breakfast, Constable Joss said. We've earned a good morning's work. We've earned it after a good morning's work, Constable Drab agreed. The gentleman writer, January and I struggled to pick up the loaded coffin, but once we were moving, we got into a rhythm and trotted through the red-washed streets, red as blood from a freshly torn liver, to the Storm Inn. We placed the coffin carefully on the stage. I pushed the switch. Nothing happened. Then a tubby figure stepped from behind the curtain. He was dressed in a green coat and he wore a worried frown. He raised a boot and kicked the switch and the lid flew open. The figure in the green coat knelt by the coffin. Theus, my boy, how are you feeling? The corpse opened its eyes and groaned. My throat hurts, he croaked as he sat up stiffly, and he rose to his feet a little shaky. Uncle Edward took the handkerchief out of the pocket of his green coat and mopped his brow. I owe you my life, young Thais. Thank the Lord you are alive. Thais and Uncle Edward wrapped their arms around one another, and I wrapped my arms around January Storm. The English gentleman looked on and smiled. And ever join me tomorrow for chapter 26, The Storm Inn, the night before the execution. Thais has got some explaining to do, and so has Uncle Edward. Have a great day, guys. See you soon.